I met her the way you meet most neighbors, without meaning to. She was in the small laundry room at the end of the hall, leaning against a washing machine that sounded like it might collapse. I had a basket tucked under my arm, half empty because I hadn't gotten around to doing a full load in weeks. She looked up, nodded, then went back to folding a stack of white towels with the kind of attention people usually give to a crossword puzzle. I said, "Evening, ma'am," without thinking. She glanced at me, sharp, quick, and smiled like I'd dropped a pebble in calm water. "Call me that again," she said, "and I might kiss you." I laughed because I didn't know what else to do. The sound came out awkward, half stifled, and I bent down to shove shirts into the machine as if that would hide it. When I looked up, she was still smiling, but softer now, like she regretted saying it out loud. The silence that followed wasn't heavy, just stretched. The hum of the dryers filled it. I'd seen her before, of course. We lived across the hall from each other. I knew her footsteps, heels clicking at odd hours, the squeak of her grocery cart wheels. I'd nodded once in the elevator. But we'd never spoken longer than, "Hello?" And now here she was, teasing me like we'd been doing this for years. "Sorry," she added finally, stacking the last towel. "Long day." I shook my head. "No, it's fine. My hand hovered over the machine like I'd forgotten how to use it. "I deserve that." Her laugh was low, almost hidden. "What does that mean?" I shrugged. "I probably did." She tilted her head, curious, but didn't push. That was the first thing I noticed about her. She had this way of not asking the questions most people would. Like she trusted silence to explain enough. I poured in too much detergent, winced at the spill, and grabbed a paper towel. My hand brushed against hers when she reached for the same roll. I pulled back too fast, muttered something like, "Sorry," and she only raised an eyebrow, her mouth twitching like she'd found it amusing. It was nothing. Just neighbors doing laundry. But walking back to my apartment with the hum of machines behind me, I kept replaying that line in my head, "Call me that again, and I might kiss you." I told myself she was joking. She had to be. But my apartment felt too quiet when I shut the door. The TV remote sat where I left it. The stack of unopened mail leaned against the fruit bowl I hadn't filled in weeks. I thought about texting someone, but my phone stayed on the table. I didn't know who I would have texted anyway. I made coffee at 9 at night, because it gave me something to do with my hands. I sat at the kitchen counter, half listening to the thin walls between us. I thought I heard the rhythm of her footsteps, then nothing. When I finally checked my phone again, there was a message from an unknown number. Just a single line. "You fold shirts like someone who doesn't plan on keeping them long." I stared at it, heat rising in my face, unsure if I should answer, or if she'd even meant me to. And for the first time in a long while, the quiet didn't feel the same. The text sat on my phone all night. I didn't answer. Not because I didn't want to, but because I wasn't sure what it would mean if I did. By morning, I'd convinced myself it was a mistake. Maybe she'd sent it to someone else. Maybe she regretted it the second she hit send. But then, when I opened my door to leave for class, there she was, keys in hand, coat draped over her arm, looking like she had nowhere to be but everywhere to go. "You didn't reply," she said. No smile this time, just a calm, steady voice. I swallowed. Didn't know if I should. She looked at me for a long second, then laughed quietly, shaking her head. "You're careful." That's unusual. I wanted to ask what she meant, but instead I followed her down the stairs, our steps uneven. We ended up in the courtyard, cold morning air clinging to our jackets. She lit a cigarette. I didn't smoke, but I stayed, watching the way her hands shielded the flame. "Divorce papers came through last year," she said suddenly, like she'd pulled the words out just to see if they'd hold. I nodded, not sure what to say. She smirked at my silence. "Don't worry. I'm not asking you to play therapist. Just, funny how quiet the apartment feels when you stop waiting for someone to come home." Something in her tone caught me. I thought about the empty cups on my counter, the texts I never sent. "Yeah," I murmured. I know that quiet. She flicked ash into the wind, eyes scanning me. Do you? I wanted to tell her how nights stretched out, how the smallest sound, an ice cube shifting in a glass, the radiator clicking, felt louder than it should. But I didn't. I just nodded again. That silence between us, the one in the laundry room, was back. Not awkward, not heavy. Just something that pressed in, like gravity. I glanced at her hand, the one holding the cigarette, and thought about how close it was. I wondered what it would feel like if I reached out, not to take it, just to brush my fingers near hers. The thought alone felt dangerous. She must have noticed me looking, because she let the cigarette dangle loosely and said, "Don't worry. I'm not going to corrupt the neighbor kid." I tried to laugh, but it caught in my throat. "I'm 22, I said, maybe too quickly. Her mouth curved, half amusement, half warning. "That's what makes it worse." The cigarette burned low. She stubbed it out on the concrete wall, then looked at me, softer now. "You should get to class," she said, adjusting her coat. I nodded, started to step away, then felt her fingers lightly brush my sleeve. Just once. Barely there. "Careful with the detergent next time," she murmured. And then she was gone, leaving me with the ghost of her touch, and the unmistakable feeling that whatever this was, it wasn't nothing. The next time I saw her was in the mailroom. My hands were full of envelopes, credit card offers, bills I'd ignore for a week. She was already there, leaning against the wall, flipping through a magazine she hadn't paid for. "You always look like you're bracing for bad news," she said, nodding at the letters. I smiled faintly. "Usually am." She closed the magazine. "You're too young to be that resigned." I wanted to ask too young for what? But before I could, the door swung open and one of my classmates, Jake, stepped in. He froze when he saw us. "Oh. Hey, man." He looked between us too long. "Hey," I muttered. She slipped the magazine back onto the pile, straightened. "Evening." Jake nodded at her, polite, distant, then gave me that grin he always used when he thought he'd caught me out. "Study group tonight?" "Yeah," I said quickly. "Good. Don't forget." He left without collecting his mail. The silence after was sharp. She picked at her sleeve, eyes lowered. "You don't have to explain," she said. I wasn't going to. I answered too fast. She gave a small smile, one that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Careful, or he'll start guessing things." The thought made my chest tighten. Because she was right. Because even standing this close, the air between us felt charged, like we were leaving fingerprints on something fragile. I shifted the letters in my hand, restless. She noticed. "You always fidget when you want to leave." I froze, then laughed lightly. "Do I?" "Yeah." Her gaze lingered a little too long. "But you don't, do you?" "Leave, I mean." The way she said it, soft, almost a whisper, pulled me in. My fingers brushed the edge of the counter, searching for balance. She stepped back, like she realized she'd gone too far. The air cooled. "Don't," she said suddenly, voice low. I blinked. "Don't what?" Her jaw tightened. "Don't look at me like that." I hadn't realized I was. Or maybe I had. The hum of the vending machine filled the space. I swallowed, nodded once. She exhaled, long and slow, like she was setting something down between us. Then she reached past me, her arm brushing mine, just to pick up a stray envelope from the floor. The closeness was unbearable. When she straightened, our faces were too near. Not enough distance. Her eyes flicked down, then up again. For a second, it felt inevitable. Her hand half raised, my breath caught. Then she pulled back sharply, dropped the envelope on the counter. "You should go," she said, not meeting my eyes. And I did, letters crumpled in my hand, heartbeat loud, knowing I'd almost crossed into something I couldn't take back. It was late. I'd just gotten back from campus when I saw her outside, sitting on the low stone bench by the courtyard. A paper cup of tea rested beside her. She didn't look up when I approached, just shifted slightly so there was space. I sat. The silence wasn't uncomfortable, but it wasn't easy either. The night air felt heavy. "You're out late," I said. "So are you." Her voice was even, but her hands were restless, turning the cardboard sleeve on her cup. We sat like that for a while, listening to a car hum down the street, the faint sound of someone laughing on another block. Then she said, "I saw you walking with that girl today. After class." It caught me off guard. "Oh. Just a friend." She nodded quickly, too quickly. "Of course." But her fingers kept turning that sleeve tighter until it began to tear. I opened my mouth, closed it. Finally, "Why'd you ask?" She looked straight at me then, and it was like something raw slipped through the mask she usually wore. "Because it bothered me." The words hung between us, soft but sharp. I didn't know what to say. My chest tightened with something between relief and fear. She gave a small, tired laugh, shaking her head. "You see? This is why I shouldn't." She stopped herself, eyes closing for a moment. "It's ridiculous. I'm too old for it, don't." I cut in. My voice cracked, and I hated how young it made me sound. "Don't say it like that." Her eyes searched mine, wide now, almost startled. "I don't." I struggled, heat crawling up my neck. "I don't think about you like," I faltered. My hands clenched against my knees. "I mean, I do think about you. More than I should." She exhaled sharply, almost like she'd been holding her breath. Her shoulders lowered, and for the first time, she looked uncertain. Vulnerable. The sleeve on her cup tore clean through. She didn't notice. We sat too close. Her knee brushed mine. Neither of us moved. "Do you have any idea," she whispered, "how much trouble this could be?" I nodded, unable to look away. "And yet," she added, softer now, almost to herself, "you're still here." I wanted to reach for her hand. I didn't. I wanted to close the distance. I couldn't. The night pressed around us, and in that small courtyard, the world narrowed to just the sound of her breath and mine. She tilted her head, eyes fixed on me, something unspoken trembling at the edge of her lips. And then she asked, almost inaudible, "What are we doing?" For 3 days I didn't see her. The bench in the courtyard stayed empty. Her blinds stayed closed. Even the sound of her cartwheels in the hallway was gone. At first, I told myself she was busy. Work. Errands. Anything ordinary. But by the 4th day, it felt deliberate, like she was moving around me, choosing silence. When I finally caught her in the lobby, she smiled, but it wasn't the same. Quick, polite, like I was a stranger again. She carried groceries, and when I offered to help, she shook her head before I finished the sentence. "Thanks, but I've got it," she said, eyes fixed on the elevator. I wanted to ask why. Why the sudden distance, why the retreat after everything we hadn't said but almost had. But I didn't. My throat locked. That night, slipping past her door on the way to mine, I heard voices inside, soft, lower than hers. A man's. My chest tightened, and I told myself it could be anything. A brother. A friend. But the sound of laughter didn't feel like family. The next morning, I saw the shoes outside her door. Men's dress shoes, polished, neatly placed. I stared at them too long before walking away. By the time I got to class, I'd already built the story in my head. Maybe it was her ex, maybe someone new. Maybe she hadn't wanted me at all, just the thrill of almost. The thought burned and soothed at the same time. If it wasn't real, then I wasn't foolish. But if it was, then what had I been to her? I almost texted, "Did I do something?" My thumb hovered over the screen. I deleted it. Wrote again, "We need to talk." Deleted that too. By midnight the message box was empty, my phone dark on the table. The silence from her side was louder than any confession would have been. And the strange thing was, I didn't feel heartbroken. I felt paused. Like life forgot to finish the sentence. I lay there wondering if she'd ever meant to finish it at all. It was raining the night it broke. Not a storm, just that steady, fine kind of rain that soaks everything without anyone noticing. I was unlocking my door when hers opened across the hall. She hesitated. No groceries, no cigarette, no pretense this time. Just her, holding a mug like it was armor. "You're avoiding me," I said before I could stop myself. Her eyes flicked up, startled. Then she sighed, leaning against her doorframe. "You noticed." I noticed. The hallway smelled like wet carpet, the hum of the building lights filling the silence. Neither of us moved. Finally, she crossed the hall, slow steps, setting her mug on the floor as if she didn't trust her own hands. "I didn't mean to," she trailed off, biting the inside of her cheek. "The other night. I let it go too far." My chest tightened. "It didn't feel one-sided." She winced. "That's what scares me." I searched her face, tired eyes, rain-damp hair. I wanted to tell her she wasn't wrong, that I thought about her more than I should. But all that came out was, "So now what?" Her laugh was small, humorless. "You're 22. I'm 45. People would call it a mistake before they knew our names. Do you think it's a mistake?" My voice cracked on the last word. Her hand went to her temple, rubbed once, then dropped. "I think—" She stopped. The pause stretched. "I think I like hearing you at my door. I think I miss it when you're not." That was all. No declarations. Just that. I stepped closer. Not touching, just close enough that I could see the rain on her eyelashes. My hand half lifted, then froze midair. "Then maybe that's enough," I said. Her lips parted like she wanted to argue, but instead she exhaled. Slowly, she reached out and brushed the back of her fingers against my sleeve. Barely a touch, but it burned all the same. We stood like that, silent, until she whispered, "Okay." And for the first time, it felt like the pause finally ended. Time didn't change everything at once. It was slow. Imperfect. Like the way rain stains a sidewalk and then dries in patches. We never talked about that night in the hallway again. Not directly. But something shifted after it. A softer gravity. Mornings, I'd hear her kettle whistle faintly through the wall. By 8:47 a.m., she'd step out with a thermos of tea, I with a black coffee from the corner shop. Sometimes we'd catch each other on the stairs, moving in sync without meaning to. She'd raise her cup in a quiet salute, I'd nod back, wordless. The courtyard bench became ours again. No confessions, no storms. Just space. She'd bring her tea, I'd bring the coffee, and we'd sit, sometimes talking about nothing, sometimes not talking at all. Once she teased me about folding shirts better. I told her she was impossible. She smiled like it was the kind of word she didn't mind. Her ex stopped showing up. I never asked why. She never explained. But little by little, her blinds opened again, her cartwheels squeaked down the hall, and the silence between us lost its edge. One night in early spring, she knocked on my door with 2 mugs in hand. "Ran out of sugar," she said, though she doesn't take sugar in her tea. We sat in my kitchen, the cheap overhead light buzzing. She leaned against the counter, watching me stir mine, and said, almost absent-mindedly, "This feels less lonely." I didn't answer. I didn't have to. We didn't fall into love all at once. It was quieter than that. Like steady rain. Like neighbors who kept finding excuses to stay in the same room. Now, months later, I know her laugh before it happens. She knows when I'm fidgeting because I don't want to leave. The bench is still there, the kettle still whistles, the coffee's still bitter. But it feels different. Grounded. Warm. Like something we built without realizing. Last night she brushed her fingers against my sleeve again. Just like before, only this time, she didn't pull away. I don't think anyone else would understand what that means. But we do. And maybe that's enough.